down ambushes, could not fire at the enemy unless the enemy shot them first. What was that? That was a defensive strategy. It meant you were on the defense. You're defending yourself. You're not fighting. What does it mean when you fight? It means you see the enemy, you shoot them. You don't wait for them to shoot you first. And as Pete Hegseth says, this is about raising warriors, not just defenders. Also, anybody who knows sports or who plays, strategy games like chess, if you're only playing strategy, you are going to lose. At the very least, you're never going to win. If you're only playing defense, it means you're only defending yourself when attacked. In the end of the game, you're either going to end up losing something or having a stalemate because you have never taken a step beyond defense. You will never win. America now is looking to actually win wars. And I think the real key part is where he says it's about going on the offense, not just being on the defense. That's a very, very big deal. Offense, not just defense. America is now going to actually fight. That is a massive deal when it comes to how we deal with our conflicts. And presumably, as he's saying, we're focusing on maximum lethality, not just waiting to get shot at before we fight. This is America actually becoming a fighter yet again. This is about America standing up and being willing to fight the wars we're in. Now, another important point, the renaming is more of a restoration of the original name of the department. This is not like some, like solely Trump type thing. It actually used to be called the Department of War. It was the Department of War for more than 150 years. The United States only changed war to defense in 1947, just after World War II. And so we're going back to tradition. America is yet again a war-fighting nation, at least according to the president and the defense secretary. Now, on a related point, President Trump posted a couple images on his Truth Social account without leaving a comment. And it's kind of like when Donald Trump was meeting with these, foreign leaders, and he's talking about terrorism, and he says, "Let me show you something," and hands them a picture of their house. And Trump likes to tell this story. He says, the person asks, "Why, oh Mr. Trump, are you showing me a picture of my house?" And Trump says, "Well, you're going to have to put two and two together on that one." Trump just did something very similar to Vladimir Putin, and these posts are actually raising some eyebrows. They seem to suggest a veiled threat to Russia. Let me show you what Trump is showing. First off, this is an image he posted of an American stealth bomber being escorted by 4 F-35 fighter jets, America's fifth-generation jets alongside the F-22. These are being flown overhead when he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin back on August 15th. And Trump also posted this image of himself and Putin standing next to each other, watching those jets fly overhead, escorting, of course, the American stealth bomber. Now, why, oh, why would President Trump show this? Why, oh, why would he do this? Well, maybe like when he showed that other guy this photo of his house, you're just going to have to come to the conclusion yourself. But look, remember the context of this. Pretty recently, back in June, Trump activated an American stealth bomber to fly and blow up Iran's deep underground nuclear facilities. That is the Fordo and Natanz facilities, right? And when Trump was meeting with Putin in August in Alaska, that was a fresh memory. Trump had just used that big plane flying overhead to go and bomb two places that a lot of people thought were completely beyond touch. You couldn't touch them. Nothing could ever be done about it. Trump used that pretty old plane flying overhead with Putin to go blow that thing up. At the time also he was meeting with Putin in Alaska, him having the bomber fly overhead was widely regarded as Trump issuing a not so subtle threat to Putin, saying you have two choices. You want the gold or do you want the lead, so to speak. Now remember, what's really not happening in the war between Russia and Ukraine is also this. Ukraine, like the United States has been for a very long time, is purely on the defense. They're only allowed to be defensive. They're not allowed to fight. They're not allowed to be offensive, right? They're not a war-fighting nation right now because they're being restrained by other powers. They're basically only allowed to defend themselves when attacked. They've been heavily restricted from any real damaging strikes deep into Russia. That restriction may not be forever. Trump is now suggesting that he may change something, right? They're already allowing some deep strikes into Russia. It's very limited. That could soon change if Trump decides to give Zelensky the tools, the weapons to carry out deep strikes. But also, right as Trump is posting these images, he's also saying something else. Trump says he is losing his patience with Putin. And what else is happening? Well, this may be the most telling of all of Trump's postings of those two images. What's also happening is this. The 50-day deadline that Trump gave Putin to, bring an end to the war, those 50 days are up. It just expired. And that means that Trump is now expected to do something. The big question is, will Trump put his money where his mouth is? Was that just an empty threat? Did Trump say, okay, 50 days, and if you violate it, nothing is going to happen? Empty talk from America. Don't worry about it. When do we ever do
Nothing
anything
to
when we
see
count
here.
to 5 and you don't listen to us? It's again like a parent who says, don't make me count to 10. Don't make me count to 5. And of course, they never get there because punishment is not a real thing. Is that what Trump is going to do? Well, it does seem that Trump is suggesting at the very least that an American military response is on the table. Trump is now saying 50 days are up. Let me show you a nice little picture. You can decide what it means. Now, notably, Trump also posted this headline from CBS News. He posted this, quote, Trump commits to pursuing Russia-Ukraine peace. They are not ready yet, but, quote, something is going to happen. So maybe as Trump is suggesting by posting this without comment, quote, something is going to happen. We shall see, right? Also, something else just happened. The New York Times just published a piece leaking details of a very secretive U.S. military operation focused on North Korea. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break. Now, this national security leak involves details on a Navy SEALs operation that went awry, and I'd say there may be a lot more to this than just normal run-of-the-mill journalism. The timing of this piece, the nature of it, they're both very important. Now, first off, as we've seen with hit pieces like this from the New York Times before, and especially with just the New York Times overall, it's possible this is fake news or half-truths. Very often when they do these big leaks, it turns out the story's not totally accurate. It turns out they misframed information. It turns out they misquoted people, took quotes out of context. It turns out sometimes they faked the entire thing, like the Trump-Russia hoax. We've seen over and over again the reporting is not always accurate. Oftentimes when it's big things like this, they tend to stretch the truth in their own interest. But beyond that debate, the timing that they chose to publish this piece could actually impact peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. I'd say it fits into their seemingly modus operandi that they are doing things in favor of the Chinese Communist Party.
Propaganda rag is what New York
And
Times
this
is.
could also damage Trump's ability to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. What the New York Times just did could actually block peace. And by extension of this, what the New York Times just did could also strengthen the Chinese Communist Party's grip around both Russia and North Korea. Now, is that their intent? Is that what they meant to do? I have no idea. But it seems that the impact of this, the timing of it, fit with that agenda at least, whether they mean to or not. Now, the United States has special operations focused on North Korea. Very secretive operations. This is not entirely secret. It's kind of known, but they do keep it under tight wraps, the details of it. Now, the details on these operations has been leaked, at least one of them. The timing of this leak could actually hint at something a lot deeper. What's important is this. Donald Trump was just suggesting that he may again meet with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. In fact, Trump declared his openness to having a second meeting with Kim Jong-un because, remember, his first term in office, Trump crossed over the demilitarized zone, shook hands with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, gave him a cassette tape of Elton John's Rocket Man. Yes, your president actually did that. And this seemed they became very good friends, at least for a brief time. Trump took great pride in meeting with the North Korean leader. After Trump left office, American and North Korean relations again deteriorated, as did South Korean-North Korean relations. Trump is now saying he is open to having another meeting like that in order to try to pull South or North Korea away from the Chinese Communist Party. And Trump also discussed having a meeting like this when he was having the White House meeting with South Korea's president. Now, alongside this also, Trump is also trying to bring an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, where the North Korean regime plays a very key role. North Korea is sending troops to, again, Russia. They're sending weapons to Russia. But here's the even more important part. Russia and North Korea have a defensive agreement, a new one, by the way. They basically say this: war for either country means war for both countries. And what does that mean? It means that if China goes to war and North Korea gets pulled into it, or Russia gets pulled into it because they have a no-limits agreement, it means that both countries need to go to war alongside China. It means that if South Korea gets attacked by North Korea, Russia has to support North Korea against South Korea. It means that in the current war where Russia is fighting Ukraine, North Korea is now, according to the Russian North Korean
China
agreement,
and Russia.
North Korea is actually involved in that war. And so what New York Times just did comes just days after Putin and Kim Jong-un were in China meeting with CCP leader Xi Jinping for the regime's big military parade, where Trump declared the countries were conspiring against the United States. Now, important timing on this, because as Trump is trying to really kind of pull these countries out, New York Times may have just kicked the whole thing over and forced them to stay in. This is why this matters. Now, first off, SOCOM, Special Operations Command, and SOCOR, the South Korean Special Operations Command, they're both actually active in the Korean Demilitarized Zone, the DMZ. They've been active there for a very long time. The Navy SEALs Operation Leak not only shows the leak of something deeply, deeply classified for the United States, but also something that could have been leaked before and wasn't. So the big question is, why did the New York Times time this leak right when Kim Jong-un and Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, were meeting with Xi Jinping? Why did they time this leak right when Trump is talking about meeting with Kim Jong-un? Why did they do it right now? That's a very, very important question to ask. Well, this leak will likely impact Russia-Ukraine peace negotiations. This leak will likely impact Trump's stated plan to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. This leak was also timed perfectly for the Chinese Communist Party's interests over those nations and over these conflicts related to defense. It happened right when all of this was top of mind, when all these leaders are talking, and it will likely make peace a lot more difficult for Donald Trump to achieve. Now, on another topic, a young woman who was stabbed to death on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina is sparking outrage over light on crime politics and also something else: a double standard among the corporate media. The woman, Irina Zarudska, was a Ukrainian war refugee. A video shows her being allegedly murdered by a repeat criminal, DeCarlos Brown Jr. Surveillance videos on this are horrifying. It shows the woman quietly entering the train. She sits down in a chair, very subtle, small frame in a chair in front of Brown Jr. He then appears to stir in his seat. As the woman looks at her phone, keeping to herself, Brown is seen pulling out what appears to be a pocket knife. He unfolds it, he stands up, and he swings at her in a very violent motion. The video cuts out. We're not being shown the alleged murder. Horrifying stuff. Brown is then seen in other video pieces walking around different train cars, blood dripping from him, and then removing his shirt, seemingly to, try to, hide himself. Brown was arrested not long after that, and is now being charged with first-degree murder. Now, the case update from the Charlotte Police Department says the woman was declared dead on the scene with an undisclosed number of knife wounds. They're not telling us how many times he allegedly stabbed her. They're not showing us the video of what actually took place, whether people tried to stop him, whether they just sat there and watched. It notes the investigation is ongoing. Now, most of the establishment media has been utterly silent on this killing. And that silence has sparked viral outrage on social media. People are furious. One of the few stories that has come out actually does the opposite. One of the few stories among the big corporate media actually talks about how MAGA influencers, quote unquote, are talking about this story and why they're mad about it. Some of this has pointed double standards among news outlets, though, on interracial violence when the victim is white. Because as we saw previously, anytime you have interracial violence, it is a national issue. Anytime a white person kills somebody or does anything that is against another race, if they say so much as a racist word on video, it is in every major news outlet. Everybody's talking about it. You have American public officials, local government officials condemning it. You have people kneeling in the Capitol wearing slave scarves, ironically. You have this. Anytime there's violence that's interracial, it is a national outrage, except when the victim is white. And that's what the big thing is at right now. Others have raised comparisons to the case of former Marine Daniel Penny, because Daniel Penny, alongside two other men at least, restrained and placed Jordan Neely, a crazy homeless person, in a headlock in 2023. And that was because Neely, like Brown allegedly, was looking like he wanted to kill passengers on the subway. Neely was threatening to go on a killing spree. He was threatening violence. Other passengers on the train were so terrified by what he was saying that they restrained him. Neely died. Penny was put on trial before being found innocent. And so while people accuse him of killing him, no, he was found innocent before a jury. But the incident is being mentioned again, given that in the recent killing of this Ukrainian woman, it does not seem that other men on the train did enough to stop the murder. We don't know if anything was done. The video is not being shown to us. We don't know if people tried to restrain, allegedly, Brown. We don't know what happened with this. But it does seem the murder was allowed to take place. There were people on that train. Why did they not do enough to stop that young woman from being stabbed to death? This is raising concerns also that when people stand up against violence and murder, they put themselves in danger. Not even against the murderer, but against the media. The media attack the people who stand up and try to stop violence from happening. If a person tries to stop a murder, if a person stands up and tries to restrain somebody about to kill a young girl, that person who stands up is more likely to be attacked by the legacy media than the murderer himself. They're more likely to face serious criminal charges than the murderer himself, as we've seen over and over again with the revolving door of light on crime policies. And the issue of serious criminal charges, well, it's another key point of contention. While Neely was faced with murder charges and had his reputation utterly tarnished, dragged through the ringer, protests on the streets, public officials expressing outrage on this, people condemning him because he dared restrain a crazy guy saying he was going to murder people. It turns out the accused man in the murder of the Ukrainian woman is a repeat criminal. He's a repeat criminal who has been let off the hook over and over and over again. Now, Donald Trump is also pushing to use the National Guard and federal law enforcement to deal with crime in states accused of letting criminals run free. And this will probably also assist him if he chooses to talk about it. We'll see what happens. Well, everyone, that's all for tonight. Thank you for joining us. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free.